First article we're going to consider this evening is Article 10, the town budget.
Do we need, excuse me, Mike, do we need
Yes,
anything
you're right,
formal to
sorry.
open the public hearing?
Yes, we do. We'll do the select board first. Could I have a motion, Linda? Thanks, Dean.
Move to open the public hearing.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second, would the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Ackerman,
Aye.
Ms. Bates,
Aye.
Ms. Hotchkiss,
Aye.
Mr. Lawson,
Aye.
myself, Ms. Escobedo, aye.
Thank you. I note it passes unanimously. Mr. Banfield.
Okay, can I have a motion for the Finance Committee to also open the public hearing? Tom Tarpey, I see do we have a motion? And a second?
Second.
So we have a second. I'll call the roll. I, Dean Banfield, aye. Ms. Ortner?
Yes. Here.
Mr. Tarpey?
Aye.
Mr. Guariello?
Aye.
Mr. Taylor?
Aye.
Ms. Reynolds?
Aye.
Ms. Hartman? Mary, you're muted.
Yes, sorry.
Mr. Hickling?
Aye.
Mr. Patel?
Aye.
Mr. Jameson?
Yes.
Ms. Zoll?
Muted.
Mr. Swain?
Yes.
Mr. Rubenstein?
Aye.
Okay, I think we're good. It passes unanimously. So we're open.
Thank you very much. Public hearing is now open. I call on the town manager and the chief financial officer to present the town budget.
Hi, good evening, members of the board and the finance committee. Good to see you all again. Carrie and I will be kind of co-presenting this, and really it's the FY21 proposed town budget, take two. When we present this information back in I think February, maybe early March, it seemed like it was a whole lifetime ago, but here we are today in August with the effects of the pandemic still becoming unknown to us. But we think, report with some level of confidence on the effects of the pandemic on our town budget, and that is what is our goal to present here tonight. So I don't know if you guys want to share the screen, or if you all have the presentations in front of you.
Chris should have the presentation to share.
Okay, I'm loading it up. Give me a second. Thanks, Carrie.
Okay, sure.
So before I get started, I know it goes without saying, but I'll say it anyway, that the work of the finance department, but also all of the town departments on the original budget, I thought was very good. We were able to submit a budget, met the finance committee's guidelines. And in the meantime, here in the midst of COVID-19, we are all able to work together to make adjustments that we think will maintain our services and our operational needs, but while making some thoughtful reductions in key areas. And, like I said, I think it's a credit to both the finance department and Kerry specifically, but also generally town departments and their ability to, and I guess I would extend that to the Concord Public Schools and the Concord Carlisle Regional School District. Everyone really has been at the table, really looking for ways to solve problems, understanding the moment we're in. And I think the results that we're presenting and that I think the schools will present are a reflection of us taking not only the moment we're in very seriously, but also the feedback we get from the community about this moment very seriously. So, Chris, I don't know if you're okay.
Good.
So I don't have to read all of this, do I? So let's get right to slide 2 then. So just to restate, the original budget was a finance committee guideline, 2.5% increase in general funds. And the big story in this slide is the revised budget reflecting assumed revenue reductions and to some extent expenditure reductions is a 2.35% reduction to FY21. So I want to make sure it's clear. It's not 2.3% less than what we were proposing in February. It's 2.3% less than the last fiscal year. So this presentation does not get into the level of detail that the rebalancing the budget presentation that was presented to both the select board and the finance committee gets into. So that is on the finance committee's meetings page. So if people want to see that level of detail, I would refer you to there. We can also load it onto the town meeting page for this article as well. But all of you have seen those details, and so we don't. The town meeting presentation, we didn't fill with the space for that level of detail. But the big story here is the reduction compared to FY20. So in the highlights, we talked about the new budget book format. Hopefully people have had a chance to get their hands on either a printed copy or a PDF copy. It's a great looking book. Really, I think presents all the same information, but in an approachable way. We also consolidated the budget line items, going from I think 32 to 16 or 18, and I do go through those again at the end of the presentation, like I did back earlier this year. We did continue with the fire department command structural change. I think one of the things we've learned since the pandemic has begun is that need for that structural change is even more pronounced. So we did stick with that. We still stuck with our increased legal services budget and some of the things that have unfolded with regards to our legal service demands. I think underscore that need for that increased budget. And we had proposed 2 new positions, the dispatcher and the land manager. Since the budget was initially presented, specifically due to COVID-19, we have added 2 additional full-time positions, and those are 2 full-time custodians. As you know, the governor has issued guidance on office space custodial care, and that has really driven up our custodial demands. And after and actually Kate Hodges, who I believe is in this meeting as well, she and Ryan Orr in our facilities department did a really masterful job of analyzing our custodial needs town-wide. And so we decided that after looking at options for outsourcing versus insourcing, we felt we were going to get a better bang for our buck. Adding 2 full-time custodians, which, like I said, it's a new need in light of the pandemic, but the costs are offset by a reduction of contractual services. So there were contracted cleaning companies whose, once these custodians come on board, their contracts will be ended. So the cost will be offset by that. And then the biggest thing is we'll enjoy much greater flexibility and control over our level and quality of custodial care. So the other thing is, and we'll get this if you saw the rebalancing presentation, you saw the specifics about the reduction in the salary reserve, and we eliminated funding for certain vacant positions to offset increases. The next slide. So I put in this slide. It was in the original presentation. We were asked at an early hearing, I think at the town meeting preview, about FTEs and the growth in FTEs. So I just added the 2 custodians as I just presented on the past slide. There's 54 driven by since FY15. As you can see, the light plant, fire department, and IT combined for about 15 of those. And part of that is, as you can see below, expansion of services at the West Concord Fire Station. We've opened a broadband business. There's increased demand for services, and specifically 2 of those positions I just highlighted are a result of COVID-19. And then we've got expanded roles, in large part due to many new boards and committees, assuming control of public access television, Minuteman Media Network, and then the growth of the facilities division, and then emerging needs, specifically municipal archivist, tourism, and sustainability. So there's been as I mentioned a few months ago, there's been a thoughtful growth in employees that are really targeted to specific community needs. If you look at the presentation, the last presentation, I did have the enterprise fund budget numbers on there, but I will tell you that given what has occurred with the recreation department and the Beatty Center, which Kate will talk about in a bit, we didn't really have those numbers. It was harder to kind of project those numbers, I think. I think they are a projection, and I think we wanted to make sure that we were as accurate as possible. So I left those out of the general fund presentation, and we'll keep those for discussion in the enterprise funds.
Okay, so I'm going to walk you through the next several slides and talk in a little more depth about some of the changes that we've made to the budget. And I think the good news here, even with what's happening with the pandemic and the concern for lost revenues, we've been able to make adjustments in the budget, and we're still able to move forward many of the initiatives that we had hoped to move forward when we presented this budget to you the first time around. So in general government, as Stephen mentioned, we have consolidated our facilities division. Our facilities division is a division that has been growing over the last several years as we have taken on maintenance of additional buildings, and brought the amount of work up to a level where we've had to analyze, did it make sense to be contracting these services, or did we have enough of this work to bring specialists in-house? And so over the last several years, we have grown our facilities department. But what we've also been able to do is pull out pieces of facilities maintenance in individual budgets and bring them under one manager, the facilities director. And in doing so, we've identified at least $10,000 worth of savings in fiscal 21. And this is going to be something that we continue to look at and would hope that we would be able to find additional savings going forward. Stephen had mentioned the increase in legal services. We've added $94,000 to legal services and hope that that will be sufficient to cover legal expenses for fiscal 21. We have added about $24,000 in total to our visitor center economic vitality division. So this notion of having a staff member handle economic vitality issues, working with the business community, that's new in the budget this year. This is an added responsibility for one of our staff members who has a lot of experience in this area. You may recall, at least for the last couple of years, we've been trying to set aside some money within the budget for economic development activities. We're able to do that in 21, and what a perfect time with everything that's going on. It really couldn't be happening at a better time. In the finance department, this really is a realignment. We have the Concord retirement system, which really is an independent entity, separate and distinct from the town of Concord. And we are in the process really of separating the two entities. In last year and years before, all of the funding for the staff at the retirement system actually flowed through the town's general fund and was offset 100% by a billing to the retirement system. We've taken that out as we move down the road towards separating these two entities. In planning and land management, we have a new position, a land manager position. This person will be primarily charged with overseeing the vast conservation lands that the town of Concord owns. This individual will also be responsible for inspections that are required under the tree preservation bylaw. And these inspections were previously done through our inspections division. That work and the funding, the fees that are levied under the tree preservation bylaw will help offset the land manager position. So the position itself is a $72,000 position, but there are $36,000 worth of fees that are estimated to offset that new position. Next slide. So then in public safety, Stephen also mentioned the change in the command structure at the fire department. The net cost here is $44,000. And this entails promoting 4 current firefighters to the rank of lieutenant. And this will allow the fire chief to have a lieutenant stationed at each of the stations. So one at Walden Street, one in West Concord. And then the captain, who is the most senior officer on duty, is able to be the duty or the shift commander. Previously, the captain was housed out of Walden Street, and that individual would serve as the entire shift commander, but also the commander for the operation at Walden Street. And it, particularly when there was an incident running, that person was wearing two hats, and it was very difficult. So this change, a fairly incidental increase in expenditure, provides a huge operational advantage at the fire department.
One of the things, sorry, Carrie, just one of the things that, as I mentioned, is even more enforced is due to the COVID-19, the contagiousness of it. The fire department has not been commingling shifts by and large. So the people who work in West Concord work in West Concord. The people who work on Walden Street work on Walden Street. In the past, people could fill shifts and do overtime and things like that. And the chief assessed early on that to make sure that if one person in one station was affected, you could minimize the spread. He stopped allowing people to commingle shifts, and that has continued. And I expect that to continue into the future until until the virus is no longer present. And so when I said the structure is even more important now due to COVID-19, that's the reason. Sorry, Carrie.
No, that's okay. And so then another change at the fire department is adding a second dispatcher on the overnight shifts so that we have 2 personnel on in dispatch at all times. Over the years, the complexity of the calls that the dispatchers have to manage and the work that they have to do as a result of the emergency medical dispatch, which is a couple of years old now, it really places a huge burden on the dispatchers that are working. And so this would allow them to have 2 on staff at all times. We also have a planned reduction in the support from the Emergency Services Stabilization Fund. We certainly talked about this a lot last year and as we put this budget together. But when we added A3, the second ambulance at West Concord, we had a funding plan where we were going to use money set aside in the Emergency Services Stabilization Fund over a period of 4 years to phase in the full impact to the general fund. So we do have a planned reduction of $124,000 that we had to absorb in the general fund budget this year. All of that is offset by a total department-wide attrition savings of about $277,000. So we've had a lot of turnover due to retirement in public safety and in the fire department specifically that helps us offset these costs in this year. But obviously, the attrition savings is going to diminish over a period of years, and we'll have to address that going forward. In Public Works, we are looking to replace the fuel depot. We have $20,000 in the budget that will be combined with some funding from prior years to be able to replace that fuel depot. Here, I note a decrease in cost of street lighting due to efficient fixtures, $12,000. We've actually increased that to $17,500 based on a further analysis after we close the fiscal 20 budget. In Human Services, we do have some attrition savings at the library, estimated at about $32,000. And then in Social Services, we're looking to make some adjustments in our grid structure, particularly for the social workers. We've found, and this is something that we've noted over a period of years, we've had a very difficult time hiring people into those very critical positions because of the low salary that we've offered. So we did agree to implement a market adjustment in fiscal 21, and boy, those people, those staff members are really earning every penny through this pandemic. It's been a difficult time, so we're we're thankful that we're able to make the adjustment this year. Next slide, please. So then we've also mentioned the salary reserve account. We originally had budgeted at $500,000. That has been reduced to $250,000 as a way to help close the gap that is expected because of revenue reductions. And this, we feel comfortable with this. It will allow the town manager to provide adjustments that are in line with what we're seeing other communities giving during this difficult time. Also, the capital outlay and debt, we've moved that into one warrant article. We've reduced that total by $705,000. We'll talk about that more under Article 11. But the main reason that we've moved capital outlay into the debt article, so we have one comprehensive capital improvement plan article, really is so there's no question about the life or the longevity of any of these capital appropriations. We don't want them tied to a budget article that closes at June 30, because there are often many valid reasons why an authorized and appropriated capital outlay expense doesn't occur in the same budget year. So we are moving everything to put it into one capital article so that it survives as long as there is funding available in that article. In total, across all of our departments, we have in excess of $350,000 in attrition savings. We've noted, at least at the time we put this together, we've had a lot of turnover, 7 firefighters, 14 police officers, a new town manager, a new special collections curator, and some additional positions have turned over since. We note that the attrition savings will not continue, obviously, as employees advance through the compensation scale, and that some of these savings will be offset by increased training costs. But we are seeing quite a bit of savings in fiscal 21 that will last for a couple of years before people start moving up in the scales. And then next slide, please. So this is a summary of all of the transfers and credits that are added to the general fund budget. And these are transfers and credits that come from funds other than the general fund, most notably the enterprise funds. So the enterprise funds receive a variety of services from general fund departments. We've talked about this before. They receive payroll services and banking services and recruitment and benefits services from human resources. So we assign a fee just as if they were an independent entity, and we charge them for the cost of those services. And we bring that revenue into the general fund. It is a revenue source that is used to support the general fund appropriation. And in total, these transfers and credits are about $2.8 million. And I note that we typically have a transfer from recreation and BD to support these services, but because of the impact of COVID-19 on their operations, in fiscal 21, we have eliminated those transfers. So for recreation, it's $205,000, and for BD, $83,000 that we had originally included as a revenue offset to the general fund that we have since removed and had to make adjustments in the budget to account for that reduction in revenue. Next slide, please. So this is just a summary, and really the top half of this graph is what we're talking about, the town government. The general fund portion of the appropriation is $25,211,000. It is $87,000 or 0.35% lower than what we presented to you back in February or March. The transfers are also lower by $587,000 or 17%, most notably because of the adjustments from recreation and BD. leaving the total appropriation at $28,031,663, which is about $675,000 lower than the original fiscal 21 presentation, or 2.35%. And then we've also included for the K-8 system, the high school guidelines as a total is up 1.1 million over the original fiscal 21. Non-guidelines is up about 600,000. So the budget in total, or total spending for fiscal 21, is up about 1.7%, at 1.7 million, or about 1.5%, which is about half of where it was when it was originally presented. Next slide. Stephen,
So, so I had trouble getting the mute button. So just to show where allocations of each dollar raised goes, about a quarter, 24 cents goes to town government, 35 cents goes to Concord Public Schools, 18 to the regional school district. So combined, the public schools are, more than 50 cents appropriately so. And I think in common for most municipalities, the schools are the majority of the budget. And then you can see we've got other kind of fixed expenses like group health insurance, which we did a lot of, Kerry Leffler and HR Director Amy Foley did a significant amount of work on trying to tweak our plan designs and incentivize reduced enrollment and higher cost plans. And that's in that rebalancing presentation that you saw that each of you have seen. We did achieve some savings for FY21 through that process. It's a little thing that doesn't often get noticed in the big picture, but as you can see, when it's 6% of your budget, changes in that can make a big difference. And then you've got other post-employment benefits, which is basically retiree health, retirement, which is our pension system. You've got debt, which is excludable debt. And then you've got all other kind of miscellaneous things at about 3 cents. So for what it's worth, this looks like a relatively normal alignment of expenditure allocation for a municipality. I think it shows that Concord has balanced its expenses very, very well. Next slide. And actually, Chris, we can just fly through these. I just want to show basically the roadmap of the consolidation. And you all saw this before, so I don't need to dwell on it. It hasn't changed. Only the numbers have changed. But it really just, if someone says, where are the line items going, they can follow this roadmap and see where we consolidated. And the consolidation helps with flexibility. I also think it helps with approachability of the budget information. So, Chris, I think we can just kind of go through these quickly. You can see that some of these things change around a little bit. So that's the presentation. Again, I'd like to thank Kerry for all the work she's put into this, and open it for questions.
Right, thank you very much, Stephen and Kerry. So let me turn now to the committees and ask if from the Finance Committee or the Select Board, if there are questions that you want to ask, just raise your hand and I'll call on you. Phil, is that your hand?
Yes.
Please go ahead.
It's about the legal budget. You said that it was going up by about $94,000 from last year. And so where does that put us? And is that going to be enough, including all the recent litigation like the injunction and so on?
I think that puts us up at about 309.
Yeah, I think it's probably 320.
And as we believe that with the process specifically on Estabrook, that we do think that we will be able to we're at a place where that should cover it.
Thank you. Other, Mary.
I have a quick question about the incremental headcount that you have. You mentioned that you're hiring 2 new custodial positions, mm-hmm. and you're going to offset that by eliminating some contractual services, right? Mm-hmm. Is that temporary in response to some of the work that you need to do for COVID, or are these expected to be permanent?
They'll be permanent positions. They're driven right now by requirements for COVID-19. But in the analysis, it showed that insourcing now will, so if you remember, we consolidated building expense line items when I presented the budget back in February. And we talked, I think I had said at the time, there was really a need to consolidate custodial services, but because it was so complicated and every building had a different plan, it was kind of a challenge. Fast forward to now, we had a situation that was really an emergency situation that required us to basically come up with a new plan kind of in real time. And so we were able to do that consolidation, which is going to include the 2 new positions, but also we will continue with some of our contracted cleaners. But there were other services that we knew we weren't going to be able to renew with for certain buildings. And, 2 custodians, I think, I'll be honest with you, we did take what's the fewest number of new people that we think we can adequately protect our employees and residents with our custodial services. So, like I said, I think, based on the money we spend on custodial contracts, and I'll say this, in terms of a general funds, line or department budget, I believe that it'll probably wash out. In terms of the fully loaded cost, I'm not sure. I think we have to, there's some figuring out that we need to do there, but like I said, we did the analysis of insourcing versus outsourcing, and given both our experience with contracted custodial services and the new demands that are placed upon us by the state's orders, this was really the most sensible way to do it and the most cost-effective way.
Okay.
Actually, my sources tell me that it is a wash. I don't know, Kate, if you want to go through that.
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Dean?
I have a couple questions, but let's follow up on that for just a second. So you have increased needs to keep the buildings at the right level of cleanliness. And one of the responses to that is to add permanent custodians. Does that mean that we're keeping on a certain number of contract services as well? But when the COVID demand for that extra level of cleanliness tails off, we can tail out of those contract services? I'm just trying to understand how you're managing the out year or two when, we're going to not need quite such a high level of cleaning.
Well, so I'll give you the overarching theme, then I'm going to turn it over to Kate because she really she and Ryan really spearheaded this analysis. But the bottom line is there were existing contracts that we're paying for every year that will not be renewed. And so those contract expenses go off the table and the cost of the new custodians come on. But I don't know, Kate, if you want to give more detail than that.
I don't think I need, it's okay.
No, Dean, it's a great question. You married the same question.
We paid approximately $135,000 to $155,000 for cleaning on average over the past 3 years. The difference sometimes depends on snow removal, et cetera. And so the cleaning contracts that we plan on keeping are really only relative to some of the more specialty cleaning, including the jail cells, frankly, and some of the high-risk areas and other things that we have to do relative to the visitor center. And so if we bring in 2 staff members at the rate that the custodial and maintenance custodial positions are, plus adding 20% for benefits, we're looking at about $100,000 expense. So we're projecting keeping somewhere between $20,000 and $30,000. And so those numbers actually end up being budget neutral.
And just, I'm sure all of you have read it, but it goes from daily cleanings of like public bathrooms and things like that to twice or sometimes more daily cleanings, and depending on the situation, plus keep creating and tracking a log of those cleanings, plus frequent trips around all municipal buildings, wiping down high-touch surfaces and things like that. And I'm going to give our workforce credit. A big part of this component is also town employees wiping down surfaces after they've used them. For example, I was in the office, I used the copy machine, I wiped it down with sanitizer. So I think if you're not familiar with the guidance for office space, it is lengthy and specific, and really, if you have commercial, if you run an office, you know what I'm talking about. So the 2 employees offset by a reduction in contracts, like I said, we think presents a great value for the town while keeping our workplaces safe.
Thank you. Are there any?
I have
Oh,
two
sorry.
more. I have 2 more very simple questions. Do we feel like the budget book will be redone in at least in a PDF way that has these real numbers in it? It doesn't. I'm not even requiring or asking for it to be done by town meeting, but for the permanent record, I think that if these are the budgets that get adopted, that budget book needs to be done. Can you give me an update on that?
I don't. I'll let Carrie take it, but I mean, the answer is yes. We'll have a minimally what's going to be on the website in final form that we'll submit to the GFOA. We'll have the accurate numbers.
Thank you.
I'm willing to look into getting a limited edition reprint, but we just have to see what the budget looks like and if that's worth the cost.
I'm not even contemplating that, honestly. So my final question has to do with the way transfers are managed. So Carrie, your presentation shows that the BD and the rec department are unable to provide the revenue source to the town. Can we actually realize those savings in terms of either staff reductions or I don't know how we would actually realize expense reductions, even though they can't pay. That's where I'm not. It's not clear to me. It's just a number, but it's an offset number, and it's not clear to me that we can offset the expenses, even though we know that they're unable to provide the transferred dollars.
I mean, if I can initially, Dean.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's really an ability to pay thing, and the lack of revenue to meet expenses and fund transfers for rec programs and BD programs is a result of state border shutdowns. I know you know this. I'm just for in general. So it's really ability to pay. The revenue isn't there. There are expenses, and I'll turn it over to Kate and Carrie. I don't know that we've actually quantified this, but there is somewhat of a reduction in expense in terms of all the services we provide for HR and things like that. But it's not 100%. I can tell you that. We're still the general in terms of services. If you want to look at it this way, the services funded by the general fund will continue to provide support to recreation and BD. In what amount? I'll defer to Carrie and Kate, but I don't think we have that number yet.
To just follow up, the budget slide that was presented, which was the very gross, like 6-line slide, showed that the expenses were being reduced by the amount that the BD and those transfers could not deliver into the town. Now, that's the expenses being reduced. And it's just not clear to me that we have a capacity to really draw down the expenses that in a one-to-one manner in that way. That's all. It's just the way that was presented is that here is the expense line. The transfers are now reduced by the amount that the BD can't deliver and the
I think if you wait and just hear that article, which is last on the agenda tonight, it might paint a better picture because we were able to quantify it, not at a one-to-one by any means, but certainly in a way that I think shows decreasing revenues and expenses. But there are other factors that are more static, including just maintenance of the building, water, electricity. So I think that might be helpful if we go through that.
Okay. All right. I'll hold that's fine.
All right. Thank you. Dee, I see.
Dee has her hand up.
Yep, I see Dee.
Thank you. I have one question, Carrie. This would be for you. When you were talking about the land management, the new position for the land management person, you said that $36,000 is for that person's salary is coming from fees. Can you tell me what's the source of those fees, and is it recurring annually?
It is recurring, and the source of the fees are the fees that are charged under the tree preservation bylaw. So there are inspection fees and, in similar fees. And so the tree preservation bylaw is already in place. We've been collecting those fees for a year or two. I can't remember if it's 2 years. So it is a recurring source.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions from the Finance Committee or the Select Board? I don't see any hands. I see a hand now. Linda.
Thank you for all the work that's been done on this. I'm not sure we can answer this question, but the original CARES Act provided for a reimbursement for expenses that had not previously been budgeted from March to December. And what I'm wondering is, I assume then, I'm wondering how that intersects with the budget for FY21 with additional COVID expenses that I assume, or it sounds like, have been built into that budget.
So I think generally, Linda, and that is a great question. In fact, we did a little bit of that in our other presentation, but the reality is, because we know we're going to need custodial care, and when I say it's like they were, and I don't want to mention contractors by name for obvious reason, but the buildings on Kai's Road had contracted services, and so now they're going to be done by Concord employees. That's going to need to continue into the future, and because it's budget neutral, and we feel we're going to get a better level of service. I would not submit that for CARES Act, because that would just be taking an ongoing recurring cost to be offset by one-time CARES Act money. However, if we hire them and they start before December 31st and they incur overtime, the overtime they incur would be submitted for CARES Act funding. Similarly, additional supplies, things like that, those are all CARES Act funding. One of the things we're looking at for CARES Act reimbursement is technology resources that are driven by telework. That would maybe be something that we would maybe purchase over time through the IT budget, but we'll be able to use CARES Act money to reimburse that, because telework, like as I think I said the last meeting, telework we believe is going to continue to be a part of our work environment for months anyway. And so those are the types of things that CARES Act, and the not commingling of shifts at the fire department has increased over time because of that structure, relatively modestly, but there has been an increase that gets submitted for CARES Act. So it is very specific in what you can put in, and we cannot offset. And as you heard me say, you can't offset lost revenue for that. With that, I don't know if I gave a specific enough answer or a general enough answer to that.
Well, thank you for that. My concern was that we don't lose the opportunity to tap that by having built into the budget for FY21 expenses to cover COVID-related activities. But it's, in general, I hear the line of demarcation you're making.
Right. Thank you, Linda. Again, are there any additional questions from the board or the Finance Committee? I don't see any, so I will turn to the audience. As I said before, if you have a question or you have a comment, would you please use the Q&A function below to let me know about it? I do not see any open questions. I'll wait another second or two. All right, I don't see any.